When we talk about putting your life in order, the very first step is not action, it is clarity. Too many people rush forward, piling on tasks, chasing opportunities, saying yes to everything in the hope that constant activity will eventually lead them somewhere meaningful. But without direction, all that effort becomes little more than noise. It's like sprinting in a maze with no map. You move, you sweat, you burn energy, but you don't escape. The deeper truth is that disorder begins in the mind before it ever shows up in your life. What looks like procrastination, distraction, or inconsistency on the surface often has its roots in confusion about what really matters. Clarity is not easy because it forces you to confront yourself honestly. It requires you to ask uncomfortable questions. What do I actually want? Why do I want it? Is it my desire or something I borrowed from others, family, culture, peers? The endless noise of society. Most people avoid these questions because the answers unsettle them. It is much simpler to remain in a blur, to keep moving without stopping, because slowing down means facing the chaos of your own uncertainty. But without this confrontation, order is impossible. You cannot organize a life you have not defined. Psychologically, clarity acts as a filter. Think of the mind as a lens. When it is clouded, everything appears scattered and overwhelming. But when that lens is polished, when clarity sharpens, suddenly priorities reveal themselves. You no longer feel compelled to do everything at once, nor do you waste energy on what is trivial. Instead, you begin to recognize which actions carry weight and which are simply distractions dressed as obligations. And that recognition alone creates an incredible sense of order, even before you take a single physical step. Philosophically, clarity is tied to the ancient idea of truth. To live in disorder is, in some sense, to live in falsehood, to pretend you can do everything, be everything, or want everything without contradiction. Clarity demands truth. It asks you to separate what is essential from what is illusion. And that kind of truth, though sometimes painful, is liberating. It narrows your path, but it strengthens your stride. Once you gain clarity, even imperfectly, action naturally aligns itself. You stop scattering your willpower across 100 directions and instead channel it toward a few decisive moves. That is why clarity must come before action. Without it, discipline collapses, environment loses meaning, responsibility feels like a burden, priorities blur, and even inner harmony becomes unreachable. Clarity is the foundation upon which all the other elements of order rest. So the first step is not to do more, but to pause, to think, to name what you truly seek. That stillness may feel uncomfortable at first, but it is in that silence that the fog begins to lift. And when the fog clears, you finally see the path that was hidden all along. If you wish to put your life in order, begin not with motion, but with vision, because only when you can see clearly can you walk with certainty. Once you have clarity, the next challenge is sustaining forward movement, and here is where many people stumble. They wait for motivation, as if some external spark will carry them through the difficulties of life. But motivation, by its nature, is unstable. It rises in moments of inspiration and collapses in moments of fatigue. It excites you at the start, but abandons you when the work becomes tedious. If you attempt to build your life on motivation, you are building on shifting sand. You may begin with energy, but sooner or later you will stop. What replaces motivation, what sustains effort through boredom, discomfort, and resistance, is discipline. Discipline is not glamorous. It does not give you the rush of excitement that a burst of motivation provides. Instead, it gives you something deeper: structure. Discipline is the quiet strength that allows you to act regardless of how you feel. It is the refusal to be enslaved by moods. And this is the key difference between a life that drifts into disorder and a life that holds steady through storms. Those who rely on motivation live reactively, constantly at the mercy of emotional fluctuations. Those who cultivate discipline live proactively, guided by principle rather than impulse. Psychologically, discipline functions as a stabilizing force. The human mind is naturally restless, prone to distraction, and easily seduced by comfort. Left unchecked, it will always seek the path of least resistance. But discipline acts like an internal compass, redirecting you back toward what matters even when your emotions pull you elsewhere. This is why it is often said that freedom is not the absence of constraint, but the right constraints applied deliberately. The daily routines, the consistent habits, the boundaries you set, these are not chains, they are the scaffolding that allows you to rise higher. Philosophically, discipline is a form of self-mastery. To govern your own actions rather than be governed by impulses is to step into sovereignty over yourself. The Stoics understood this well. He who cannot rule himself is a slave, no matter how free he appears. Discipline, then, is the practice of ruling yourself with fairness and firmness so that your higher aims are never sacrificed to your lower urges. And it is important to remember that discipline is not about harshness, It is about alignment. It ensures that what you do today is in harmony with what you want tomorrow. When clarity gives you the vision, discipline ensures that vision does not evaporate under the weight of excuses. Motivation may open the door, but only discipline carries you through it. So if you wish to put your life in order, do not wait for the perfect mood or the surge of inspiration. Build habits that operate regardless of how you feel. Let your life be guided not by passing emotions, but by chosen principles. Because in the end, the person who can act without waiting to feel like it is the one who builds a life that endures. Motivation fades, but discipline remains, and it is in that steadfastness that true order begins to take root. Once clarity gives you direction and discipline provides the structure to sustain it, the next layer of order reveals itself in the environment you inhabit. People often underestimate the power of their surroundings, imagining that their inner world exists separately from the spaces they live and work in. But this is a mistake. Your environment does not just reflect your state of mind, it reinforces it. Walk into a cluttered room, and you will feel the subtle weight of chaos pressing down on you. Sit at a desk piled with unfinished work, scattered papers, and digital distractions, and notice how your focus begins to fragment. Disorder outside you seeps into disorder within. The environment matters because human beings are deeply impressionable creatures. We absorb cues from what is around us, often unconsciously. A messy space whispers that there is no urgency, no structure, no priority. It invites delay. On the other hand, a clean, organized environment sends a very different message. It tells the mind that things are in place, that progress is possible, that action belongs here. And the more often the mind receives that message, the more it aligns itself to act in accordance. Psychologically, this is tied to what researchers call priming. The state of your environment sets a tone that shapes your behavior without you even realizing it. If your workspace is ordered, your thoughts more easily fall into order. If your mornings begin in a chaotic rush, your day is already primed for disorder. But if you deliberately structure your environment, even in small ways, you begin to prime yourself for clarity and productivity long before effort is required. Philosophically, the environment embodies the principle that the external and internal are not separate but continuous. Ancient traditions often emphasized the importance of sacred spaces, not because the walls themselves had power, but because human beings need physical reminders of higher order. The way you shape your environment is a statement about what you value. If you claim to seek focus but surround yourself with distraction, you are living in contradiction. If you say you want peace but tolerate constant clutter, your environment silently undermines your intentions, and it is not just about physical space. In the modern age, digital environments demand equal attention. The endless notifications, the cluttered feeds, the constant availability, they drain focus and scatter attention just as much as a messy desk. To put your life in order, you must learn to curate not only the rooms you enter, but the information you allow into your mind. The principle is simple: when you cannot control everything, control what is within reach. By bringing order to your immediate environment, you reduce the friction that drains energy and create conditions where discipline and clarity can thrive. So if you want your life to move in the right direction, do not overlook the space around you. Clean it. Simplify it. Shape it so that it supports the person you are trying to become. Because every environment you inhabit is either pushing you toward order or pulling you deeper into chaos. And that choice, whether you recognize it or not, is always in your hands. Clarity gives you vision, discipline sustains your actions, and your environment reinforces your direction. But there is another principle without which no true order can exist, and that is responsibility. It is easy to speak of order as if it were simply a matter of tidying up routines or rearranging priorities, but beneath all of it lies the question of ownership. Disorder thrives wherever responsibility is denied. When you blame circumstances, other people, or even fate for the state of your life, you surrender the very power that could transform it. Responsibility is not a burden, it is the foundation of freedom. This may sound paradoxical, but freedom without responsibility is nothing more than chaos disguised as liberty. If you demand freedom but refuse responsibility, what you are left with is indulgence, not order. Think about it: a person who insists on doing only what they want, when they want, without regard for consequences, is not free at all. They are enslaved to impulse. They cannot sustain relationships, they cannot build meaningful work, and they cannot maintain order, because order requires commitment. True freedom emerges not when you escape responsibility, but when you embrace it willingly, knowing it is the price of a stable and meaningful life. Psychologically, responsibility provides coherence. When you take ownership of your choices, your failures, and your future, you establish a narrative in which you are the active author rather than a passive character. That shift is profound. People who refuse responsibility live as though life is happening to them. People who embrace it live as though life is happening through them. And that subtle difference determines whether you feel powerless in the face of chaos or empowered to bring order into it. Philosophically, responsibility has always been tied to the highest expressions of human dignity. To be responsible is to acknowledge that your actions have weight, that they matter in shaping not only your own existence, but the world around you. Every choice carries consequence, every neglect leaves a trace, and every commitment builds a foundation. When you deny responsibility, you deny your own significance. But when you accept it, you step into the role of a creator, someone capable of shaping both self and society. And this acceptance is not about perfection. It is not about carrying everything flawlessly. It is about refusing to run from what is yours to bear. Even small responsibilities, showing up on time, honoring your word, caring for your space, become the training ground for larger responsibilities in life. Each time you meet them, you strengthen the very structure that holds your life in order. So do not resent responsibility. Do not view it as weight chained to your freedom. See it instead as the very condition that makes freedom possible. If you wish for a life that is steady, meaningful, and truly your own, then take ownership of your time, your actions, your environment, your future. Because in the end, order does not come from escaping responsibility, but from embracing it with courage and consistency. Freedom without responsibility collapses into chaos. Responsibility accepted with strength transforms chaos into order. Once clarity gives you vision, discipline sustains your actions, your environment supports your direction, and responsibility grounds you in freedom. The next task is to decide what deserves your energy most. Because even when you accept responsibility, even when you are disciplined, you will find that life constantly competes for your attention. The truth is that not all things are equal. Disorder creeps in when we treat them as if they are. Think about how easily the trivial masquerades as urgent. Emails, notifications, small errands. They arrive constantly, demanding immediate response, and in giving in, we often sacrifice the deeper, slower, more essential work that actually builds a meaningful life. This is how so many people remain endlessly busy, yet strangely unfulfilled. They confuse motion with progress. They fill their days but neglect their priorities. And the consequence is a life that looks active from the outside, but feels empty from within. Psychologically, this comes from a failure of hierarchy. The human mind, left unguided, gives equal weight to everything. It responds to whatever is loudest, not to whatever is most important. But order requires ranking. It requires the courage to say, this matters more than that. These few things deserve the best of my energy, and those other things can wait, or even be discarded entirely. Without this hierarchy, life fragments into noise, and no amount of effort can resolve the disorder. Philosophically, this principle echoes the idea of values. Every human being lives by a value system, whether they acknowledge it or not. The question is whether that system is chosen or inherited blindly. To put your life in order is to consciously align your actions with what you claim to value most. If you say you value health, but give more time to distraction than to rest or exercise, you live in contradiction. If you say you value family, but give more attention to your phone than to the people in front of you, you live in contradiction. These contradictions are not trivial. They are the fractures through which disorder seeps in. This is why alignment of priorities is not just about scheduling, but about integrity. It demands honesty with yourself, what actually matters, and am I giving it the place it deserves in my life? If the answer is no, then order begins with rearranging not just your calendar, but your heart. It is not possible to do everything, but it is possible to do the right things consistently. That is how lives transform. Not through scattered bursts of effort across 100 directions, but through steady, disciplined attention to the few priorities that truly matter. So if you want to bring your life into order, stop trying to balance everything. Instead, choose carefully, rank honestly, and act courageously on what is essential. Because when you align your life with your highest priorities, disorder loses its grip, and what remains is a life of focus, meaning, and coherence. A scattered life may be full, but only a prioritized life can be whole. After clarity sharpens your vision, discipline sustains your actions, your environment supports your focus, responsibility grounds your freedom, and priorities give shape to your choices, there remains one final dimension of order, and it is the deepest of all. Outer order cannot survive if the inner self remains fractured. You can organize your schedule, declutter your home, and impose structure on your routines, but if your thoughts, emotions, and actions remain in conflict, the disorder will eventually resurface. True order begins and ends with inner harmony. This is not the shallow harmony of avoiding conflict or pretending everything is fine. It is the deeper alignment of mind, heart, and behavior. Disorder within often takes the form of contradiction. You think one thing, feel another, and do something entirely different. You want health but reach for what destroys it. You want love but act with indifference. You want growth but cling to comfort. Every contradiction chips away at your stability, creating an inner noise that no amount of outer organization can silence. Psychologically, inner harmony requires integration. Human beings are not purely rational nor purely emotional. We are a union of both. When reason dismisses emotion, we become rigid and disconnected. When emotion overrules reason, we become impulsive and chaotic. Harmony comes when both are acknowledged and aligned under a higher purpose. Reflection, honesty, and self-awareness are the tools that make this possible. They force you to confront the ways you betray yourself, the ways you scatter your energy, the ways you live in opposition to your own values. Only when you see these fractures clearly can you begin to repair them. Philosophically, this is the pursuit of coherence. To live coherently is to live as one integrated being, not as a bundle of competing selves. Ancient wisdom traditions often describe this as the unification of the soul, the reconciliation of the divided self. The Greeks called it sophrosin, a state of balance and moderation. The Stoics described it as living in accordance with nature and reason. At its core, it is about becoming whole, so that your inner life no longer works against itself, but moves in one direction. When inner harmony is established, outer order flows naturally. Decisions become clearer, actions more consistent, and relationships steadier. You stop wasting energy battling yourself, and instead direct it outward, building and creating. This is why some people, despite limited resources or difficult circumstances, radiate stability and strength. They have ordered themselves inwardly, and that order shapes everything around them. So do not make the mistake of thinking order is only about what you can see. It begins where others cannot, inside the quiet of your own mind, in the conversations you have with yourself, in the choices you make when no one is watching. Put that in order, and the rest will follow. Because in the end, a life in order is not merely a life arranged, it is a life aligned. And alignment within is the only foundation strong enough to carry order without.